More than $1 trillion is spent every year on military budgets around the world. From the United States at the top of the list to Gambia at the bottom. Every country, no matter how small, has some sort of a military. Take a look at this. The World Bank tracks the amount of money spent on military programs and compares it to overall government spending. The regions you see here shaded darker in red spend the highest percentage of their budgets on the military. Most of those countries are in East and Southeast Asia. We'll get to those in just a minute, but first let's start with the other regions shaded in dark red, Latin America. The Brazilian government is in the middle of a major program expected to last decades to both modernize its armed forces and to increase its military exports. By 2025, it hopes to put the first Brazilian-built nuclear-powered submarine into service. In an exclusive interview with CCTV, Brazil's defense minister said that as a growing power, his country must have a properly resourced army, navy, and air force. Stephen Gibbs has insight from Rio de Janeiro.
Brazil has long prided itself on one simple fact. This is a country with no enemies. There hasn't been a war here for over 140 years. But Brazil is now the world's 7th biggest economy, with first world ambitions. And what do all first world countries have in common? Military strength.
The fact that Brazil has a bigger presence in world affairs also makes it more likely that some of our actions or decisions may not please some of our partners. And although we want to keep all these relations peaceful, we cannot be sure.
Brazil has plenty to defend. This is a continental-sized country with 10 borders. The world's largest freshwater reserves and recently discovered oil.
We need, yes, for the future generation, as soon as we discover petroleum at 200 miles away of our coast. We don't want pirates coming up, jump on the platform and asking for nothing.
So Brazil is both becoming a major customer for foreign military hardware and rebuilding its own defense industry. It's now the 10th biggest defense spender in the world. The defense minister is the man everyone wants to speak to when he appears at arms fairs like this one in Brasilia, selling home-developed equipment. The displays here are similar to those at equivalent exhibits in the US and Europe, although some have a Brazilian twist. Brazil has two selling points when it comes to arms. Often its equipment is cheaper than the world's biggest brands. And in a region where there's still plenty of suspicion of the US, it has the advantage for some that it's not American.
Brazil is proud of the fact that it hasn't been involved in a significant war for almost 150 years. But does that make it more difficult to sell defense equipment?
One issue is that hardly any of these weapons have ever been battle-tested, a disadvantage as this designer of drone technology concedes.
The fact that we are not involved in armed conflicts does hinder us a bit, but we cannot use conflict to boost our industry. We have to develop our own technologies to meet our country's needs, aside from conflict.
Technology transfer is the buzzword here. Brazil is keen to go into partnership with other countries, buying their designs but building them at home. That principle is being put into action on a massive scale at this complex outside Rio. It's here where the country intends to build its first nuclear-powered submarine. The sub is based on a French design but will be entirely made in Brazil. Once this project is completed, Brazil will join a very exclusive club of countries that manufacture their own nuclear submarine. It's perhaps no coincidence that the others, the United States, Russia, Britain, France and China, are the permanent members of the United Nations Security Council, a group Brazil has long been lobbying to join. But proponents of the project say it's practicality, not pride, that's driving this.
If we have the longest Atlantic coast in the world, And if you want to ensure that there should be no piracy, no terrorists around and so on, you must be able to have the appropriate means.
The country has also just signed a $4.5 billion deal to buy 36 fighter jets from Swedish manufacturer Saab. Recent allegations of spying by the US against President Rousseff apparently helped persuade her not to buy American. Brazil's message is just because it doesn't have an enemy doesn't mean it can't join that club. Stephen Gibbs, CCTV, Rio de Janeiro.